Hello and welcome to Record Sports Hotline Live. My name is Daniel Conn. I'm delighted, as ever, to be joined by the man, the myth, the legend.
Not that delighted that you couldn't be able to make it through the studio again, Dan. Are you?
Look, Keith,
You're
the miracle
delighted.
of technology.
Delighted to be in your kitchen.
This is look. This is a.
10 minutes away for your dinner.
This is the satellite studio.
Yeah.
It's good to see you though. How's it going?
I'm all right, mate. I'm lonely in here. You know what it's like.
We started a minute late, and I think we should blame the producer Molly. She was bang out of order there, so
Yeah.
anyone's
Changed
annoyed.
today's our game. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
absolutely.
Actually, it was my fault.
Um,
Apologies.
there's plenty for us to talk about though. We obviously there's never a boring day when it comes to Rangers. It seems these days. You rather, mentioned last night, Keith, about an incoming sporting director. We didn't have a name, but now we do.
Yeah.
Kevin Thelwell.
Yeah. The name emerged not long after. I like on the show last night. I had information which happy to put out there that the appointment was imminent, very possibly be completed and announced before the end of this week. And yes, Kevin Thelwell of Everton is that man. I knew that the preferred candidate had been in Glasgow and been given a tour by Patrick Stewart at the club facilities earlier this week. And it looks very much at this moment in time as if it's Kevin Thelwell's the last man standing, and I was going to say a one-horse race, but how could you be the last man standing? That doesn't make any sense. But yeah, it looks like he's the choice for the job, barring any late U-turns or collapses by anybody. But it's going to be interesting because Patrick Stewart, in about an hour from now, I think Dan is sitting in front of putting himself up in front of a Rangers fans forum at Edmiston House. I don't know how many people are going to be there, but it seems the whole plan was announced some while ago. Seems like it's a kind of open floor Q&A, and you can imagine what he's going to get asked, and you wouldn't want to walk into that without something solid to tell the supporters about progress that's been made. It could be Kevin Thelwell's part of that. It could well be that he can reveal a little bit more about the status of Andrew Kavanagh's consortium takeover. And you would think, he'll maybe we'll find out more about what the thoughts are in the boardroom level about the job that Barry Ferguson's done and whether or not he, should be considered a candidate moving forward. But he's certainly not going to walk into that room. Patrick Stewart's a bright guy. He's not going to walk into that room armed with nothing.
Yeah.
There has to be some nuggets to spread out. There has to be some information to tell the supporters who have been waiting around now. Let's be fair, for a number of months, waiting for the sort of breakthrough news on the takeover and a definitive on when the keys will get exchanged and that sort of stuff. Now, kind of felt all along that was scheduled, and certainly in terms of where Andrew Kavanagh's mind was at to try and get this done before the end of April. What have we got now? A week?
Yep.
So maybe this is time to coincide, and maybe it was that way all along, because it was a number of weeks ago that they scheduled this fans forum with Patrick Stewart for this particular juncture. So it'll be fascinating to see what comes out of that, because there's so many moving pieces, so many problems that need to be solved, so many issues that need to be resolved. And on top of all of that, and as I keep mentioning on here, they've still got to try and start to put building blocks in place in order to be competitive next season.
Yeah.
Regardless of, takeovers, transfer, war chests, managers, sporting directors, they're already so far behind the eight ball in terms of proper planning for next season. So there's a great deal to get into, and it'll be fascinating to see what the questions are to Patrick Stewart, and B, even more so, what the answers sound like.
Well, our colleague at Record Sport, Burnsy, Scott Burns, has actually filed a piece that's on Record Sport Online this
Saw that just
afternoon.
before we come on. That's a good story from Burnsy, and Burnsy's got a terrific record with that. So I'll take that one to the bank, as they say.
He's, if for anyone that's not seen it, he says that incoming Rangers sporting director Kevin Thelwell has already eyed a raid on his former club Everton for Gareth Prosser, who I believe is the Everton head of academy. So I mean that would suggest that the wheels are very much in motion. If he's already kind of planning appointments like that.
Well, it tells you that these talks have been ongoing for some considerable length of time. And I'm sure that they have been to get into this position. As I said, Patrick Stewart came into that chief executive role with a fairly decent reputation as being a serious big hitter down south with good connections. Look, the proof's going to be in the pudding. I hadn't heard Kevin Thelwell's name until yesterday after we came out of the studio. Mm-hmm. Obviously, everybody's had time to dig about and look at his track record and his CV, but short of the fact that he looks a little bit like Harry Kane's big brother, he could have walked past me in the street and you wouldn't have. Do you know what I mean by that? You wouldn't.
Do you know? Now you say it, he does look like Harry Kane's big brother.
He does.
Aye, it's a good
dad,
shout.
maybe.
Aye.
Harry Kane's dad. So that's why you would have given him a second glance up until 24 hours ago. Now you look at what he's done, and he's had a good sort of rise career trajectory up from coaching at embassy academy level at places like Preston, Derby, and then moves up the ladder into more senior managerial positions at Wolves, ends up joining the Red Bull stable in New York for a couple of years. Interesting, the American link there. And I think Greta Steinsen, I think their paths would have crossed for a period when they were both at Everton. Obviously, Thelwell went there 3 years ago, just over. So, look, you can't know nothing about a guy 24 hours ago and then claim to know everything about him now. I think the proof is going to be in the pudding. These are the appointments that are going to make or break this whole sort of Rangers revolution or restoration or whatever you want to call it, because they need to get the right men in the right positions. This guy certainly comes to the position with a decent, heavy-hitting CV, doesn't he?
Yeah.
You look at that and say that's fairly impressive.
A proven operator, aye.
And moments before I came in the studio, I was speaking to an Everton fan who says the Everton fans are really sad to leave him go, to see him go. He said that the players actually sent out a lot of messages. Everton players sent out a lot of messages on social media when it was announced that he was going to be moving on, thanking him for his help. But at the same time, I'm told that he also likes to keep a low profile. He's not a guy that wants to grab too much attention, or he's just a guy that gets on with doing his job. His job at Everton, on the first basis, was to lower wage bills, to turn it around financially, build a player trading model, that mythical thing, and bring down the age of the squad, which is something that Rangers have always been looking to do for a period. So he ticks a lot of boxes. It'll be interesting to see. And like anything, Daniel, we've sat in here now the last few nights talking about players arriving in Glasgow into this Goldfish Bowl, into this madhouse of an arena or rivalry.
Yeah, asylum.
Yeah. And so, look, you might have credentials, you might be a very good football player, as we've discussed, but there's something else that you need to carry with you when you're taking on big positions, prominent places in clubs like Rangers and Celtic. How do you handle that? How's he going to handle that? Has he felt a pressure and intensity like it? Well, the one thing you'd say in his favour there, he went into Everton at a time when the club was, in absolute crisis mode, getting docked 15 points, threatened with relegation. The club was being put up for sale at the time.
Transfer bans as well, hasn't there? There's been all sorts.
All sorts of stuff, yeah. And I don't think that he was the guy who appointed Sean Dyche. So that was, something that if he didn't inherit it, then it was thrust upon him by the then owner. So it's not as if he's wet behind the ears. He's come in from, and Liverpool's a great football city as well, as we know. So there'll be an intensity. There will have been an intensity. And especially given the circumstances that Everton had to deal with and he had to front up. And he still managed to turn a profit in terms of the transfers. I think it was like £80 million up on the end in terms of money spent, money recouped in the transfer market. So there's a lot of things there that would kind of say this guy is certainly an interesting character for the job. Mm-hmm. Like everything, you have to make your judgment when the boots are on the ground and you get a feel for, as I said, in particular, these are unique clubs, Rangers and Celtic, and not everybody is cut out for it. But he's got a good amount of experience behind him, that's for sure.
We've got plenty of comments coming in. If you want to get involved in the discussion, please let us know what you're thinking in the comment section below. Before I come to them though, Keith, I caught up with our unofficial Rangers correspondent, Andy Newport, earlier on today, just to get his take. Well, he's not officially the Rangers correspondent, but that's kind of his role at times. Shall we hear what he had to say on the goings on? Yeah. Here's what he had to say. Andy, it's an absolute delight to have you on Hotline Live. How's it going?
Very well. Cheers, Daniel. Enjoying the sunshine, stuck inside, hoping to get out soon. So let's crack on.
Well, as it usually is, there's never a quiet day at Rangers. News came out last night of Kevin Thelwell's potential appointment as sporting director. I think, given the kind of upheaval behind the scenes at Rangers, I think a lot of fans were kind of surprised by the news.
I don't think they should have been. I think it was sort of trailed. Certainly we spoke with Patrick Stewart early January, mid-January, just after that difficult period that Philippe Clement had. We were summoned to Ibrox for a sit-down with Patrick Stewart on a Saturday lunchtime, and they discussed then that they were going to be obviously looking to implement this sort of sporting director of football model, whatever you want to call it, having sort of shied away from it. Latterly, they went with this more of a, what was the phrase they used? It was a sort of football governance board or something along those lines, where they were trying to move away from the one man being in control of recruitment as it had been under the previous situation at the club. So they had obviously, Ross Wilson being in charge, I think they were aware that there was that could lead to criticism and a lot of, one man having too much power, things could go awry, but they've obviously decided that that's the model they want to re-implement. And obviously Kevin Thelwell seems to be the guy they've picked. Seems to be a fairly, on the face of it, a decent appointment, looking at his track record at Everton and elsewhere. I'm sure we'll go into the reasons behind that, but yeah, I mean, it's I can see why they would be looking to bring somebody of his ilk into the club.
Oh, you mentioned, Andy, obviously Everton, and people putting two and two together. Sean Dyche is a manager that he's worked with very closely. I mean, I might be pulling this out of thin air, but is he a guy that perhaps you could see being the next Rangers manager?
No, I think Rangers will be looking for. I think the fans will certainly expect somebody with a more progressive outlook. I mean, I don't know. Maybe there's an element of Rangers fans that like a bit of 4-4-2. I think they were looking for somebody that can really work out an attacking plan that is a bit more than just sort of getting the ball forward early. I think we saw elements of that in Philippe Clement's game plan, and it didn't work. I think when you're up against pack defences, you need a game plan that has more than just getting the ball forward early and lumping in crosses. I think you need to have a more modern approach and a more fluid approach. So I'm not so sure that would be an appointment that would win universal acclaim from the Rangers support.
The other man that it kind of seems to me that this might have implications for if Thelwell is appointed is Nils Coppin. I mean, do we know what it would mean for Nils Coppin if Thelwell is appointed? You know, will it change his role? Could he even be on the way out? I mean, who knows?
I don't think he'll be on the way out. I think there was always again, Patrick Stewart, we spoke about this at the start of the year, that Nils Coppin will have a role to play. I think at the moment he's taken on a wider scope to his job. I think they'll look to scale that back and maybe focus it more narrowly into the recruitment side, which is obviously the scouting side, which is obviously his background from his time at PSV. And I think it was Genk he was at in Belgium as well. So, no, I think they would look to scale that back. That's where his expertise is. I think what they'll need is somebody coming in to give a more strategic role, a strategic view across the whole club, academy, women's team, first team, obviously. So that obviously looks like the kind of thing that Kevin Thelwell did when he was at Everton. I also think it would be key that he's obviously had experience working in the US with New York Red Bulls, obviously part of a multi-club sort of ownership model. Mm-hmm. Obviously, if Rangers, obviously with the new owners coming in, going to have some sort of link up with Leeds and perhaps clubs elsewhere. So the fact that they can have somebody who's comfortable working in that model, working, perhaps sharing data, sharing information with other clubs in order to get the best for both teams, both outfits. That'll be something I think would play to their advantage. And obviously Kevin Thelwell having done that with New York Red Bulls, with RB Leipzig, with Red Bull Salzburg, so I think there's a club in Brazil and maybe one or two elsewhere. So you can see that's maybe what the attraction there, why he comes in with that sort of background, and why they think that might work well as they look to move forward with this loose tie-up with Leeds and the San Francisco 49ers.
And just finally, Andy, I mean, tonight, we're pre-recording this, obviously, on Wednesday afternoon. Tonight, Patrick Stewart has a Q&A with a lot of Rangers fans at Edmondson Drive. I mean, I don't think he's going to get an easy time of it, but I would put it forward that it's a positive that he's actually engaging with fans. It's something that Rangers fans, I think, have been calling out for.
Oh, definitely. I mean, there's been far too much secrecy and just, not painting the full picture for supporters for far too long at Ibrox. So the fact that this is, he's willing to come out and, we presume, speak and lay certain things out, whether or not they're able to, just because of confidentiality clauses. You know how these legal things work, that they can't obviously say too much until things are signed and sealed. We know that we firmly believe that the takeover process is still going forward at a pace. A lot of legalities to be looked at, a lot of technicalities. The fact that you're not just buying from one shareholder, that's 2, 3, 4 different guys selling up their stake. It means that they're all having to be negotiated with individually. That's obviously holding things up. But we believe that there's an outline of a deal agreed and in place and just needs to be completed. So, listen, I think Rangers fans just want some positivity. It's been so long. They've had so little to look forward to. Things have been fairly grim for a long time. So if Patrick Stewart can come out tonight and offer some small crumbs of comfort ahead of the new season, then I'm sure they'll be welcome for that. But I think he'll obviously have some big questions to answer as well, because things haven't been going well. Even he's obviously not been responsible for that. He's only been in place for 4 or 5 months now. But even some of the decisions made, I'm thinking about things with the Union Bears, decision made to ban fans, some of the communications that have come out from the club haven't gone down universally well with the supporter base. So I'm sure, as always, there'll be some people with some gripes that they'll look to raise. So I'm sure he'll have a lot to speak about tonight.
Aye, good luck with that, Patrick. I hope it all goes well for him. Andy, I've kept you from the sun far too long. Thanks so much, as ever, for joining us on the Hotline Live.
Cheers, Daniel Paul. Thank you.
Cheers, Andy. Andy
You
Newport
did.
there.
You did keep him too long.
Aye, wee bit too long.
I
But
mean,
listen,
no, I'm just saying, like, the sunshine. Andy obviously wanted to get out and about. I don't know if you noticed, but at the door there, he had his wee pink rucksack all packed. There was probably a wee packed lunch in there or something.
working on
So
that tan as
I'm
ever.
sure Andy's having a lovely evening in a park someplace.
Let me hit you with some comments, Keith, because they're coming in thick and fast.
Did you see the pink rucksack, no?
I did spot that. I did spot that. We mentioned it off air.
Nice.
Rangers Easy OK says, nice to see the club actually hire a sporting director who's been a sporting director at a good level in his career. Everton fans today, they are mostly positive about Thelwell's time at the club. Hopefully there is background work on what type of coach they want to appoint with the takeover imminent. Also need to get moving now very fast. This one from Stephen, he says, does Thelwell know the size of the job? He needs to fix a club that is broken from top to bottom. There's a lot of people, I mentioned there, Keith, to Andy, that I felt a lot of fans were surprised. I mean, a lot of fans have written in saying things like this. Alex says, why would this board be allowed to sign up people if there is a takeover happening? Paul says, isn't this the type of appointment a new owner would want to make? Are you kind of surprised that, with a takeover, in the offing, that it's not the new guys that have appointed them?
No, but I don't know the ins and outs. But my best guess would be that no long-term future planning decisions will be being taken without the consent and knowledge of the people who are about to take the thing over. That just makes sense. There is this link with Steinson from the 49ers that might have a personal sort of relationship here. I'd be flabbergasted if these things were getting done and contracts were getting dished out without any knowledge or conversations with the people who intend to take the thing over. That doesn't make any sense to me. What I would say is that I've been banging on for weeks now about Rangers are so far behind the 8 ball for next season that they actually really need to get their finger out. So if this is step one in getting the finger out, then I can't say one thing and then criticise them for doing it. If they feel that everything that they're about to do requires that man in that position, then that would make sense rather than, going out there and, mounting some massive recruitment campaign with no strategy and no leadership to it. So in terms of, are they in a position where they thought they might be more advanced with a takeover? Maybe so, maybe not. But do they feel and have they identified that if they wait much longer, they've not really got a snowball in hell's chance of getting themselves ready to be competitive for the new season? Therefore, you have to start making changes. Now, I think Kevin Thelwell he's still got a job to all intents and purposes at Everton until his contract runs out. So can he have a real hands-on approach? Well, he'll not be sitting in the office calling the shots, but you know the way these things work. There are ways and means of, if he's just counting down the hours until he checks out at Goodison, he can have an eye on the kind of situation up the road, what needs done, the conversations that need to take place, compiling lists, etc., etc. So, in terms of everything that I've been saying that Rangers have been guilty of dragging their feet on while this process has continued, this is an indication that the guys that are involved realise, well, actually, we can't afford to wait any longer. They need to get the ball rolling. And I can only reiterate, although Patrick Stewart was tasked with heading this one up, I can only reiterate that I don't think he would have done that autonomously without checking in, running it past the guys on the other side of the pond, who are obviously keeping a very close eye on things. So, yeah, that would seem to make more sense to me. It wouldn't make any sense at all if Andrew Kavanagh was to come in the door and say, "Well, I don't want this guy." Yeah. So that's the first thing that needs to get done. He needs to get fired, and a payoff check needs to get signed. So on no basis does that sound like a plausible situation. You can only imagine And this is Rangers, so never get too far ahead of
I
yourself.
can't relent now.
Yeah, but you can only imagine in this instance that there's a coordination about everything that's going on.
What about Sean Dyche then, Keith? Because look, on the face of it, I agree with Andy. He doesn't scream Rangers manager to me. But if he's been working with Kevin Thelwell for several years, and I do think he is a good manager.
My Liverpool man tells me that Kevin Thelwell wasn't responsible for that appointment. It was Mashiri, the owner.
Okay.
And I get the impression that Kevin Thelwell was given a pass on that one by the Everton fans who just didn't take to Dyche. I mean, maybe they did it first when he managed to keep them up in really testing circumstances. But you could tell that they were growing really fed up with Dyche. And I don't think they blame Thelwell for that appointment. They blame Mashiri.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that might be right or wrong. Mashiri probably cops the blame for most of the things down there, but that does seem to be the case, that this was an appointment that he wanted. So if what you're asking me is, because Sean Dyche was working at Everton when Thelwell was part of the management setup, does that make him a potential candidate for the Rangers job? I would say to you, if I thought that Thelwell was the guy who actually headhunted Dyche for the position, there'd be a lot bigger chance of that, because you're talking about a guy with personal relationships. And by the way, a Scott Burns story points out for the head of the academy. Sorry, what was his name?
Gareth Prosser, I think.
Prosser, you're right, Gareth Prosser. Thelwell has a relationship with him going back a couple of clubs as well, I think. Mm-hmm. So there's an indication. There's a guy that he knows, that he's trusted, that he's worked with, that has followed him from club to club a little bit, and he wants to make that appointment. I'm not sure that Dyche is in the same category, because I don't think, from the information that we're hearing, is that he was the guy that Thelwell would have automatically picked for the Everton job, never mind the Rangers job.
Do you think there would be a kind of meltdown if Dyche got the job?
Listen, do you know what? See, unless Rangers pull off, Jurgen Klopp as the new manager, under that circumstance, there's no backlash, 0% back. Well, there probably still will be somebody that says, he was in his best ever, he's done now.
He's not a Rangers man.
Aye, I'm sure that. So even Jurgen Klopp wouldn't get paraded into that position without some guy somewhere reckoning that it's a bad idea and that he knew better. In fact, judging by some of the decisions that have been made over the last couple of years, there might well have been people that have been in and around the Rangers boardroom that would look at Jurgen Klopp and say, that's a bad idea. Have you seen this guy, Pedro Guixinha? You're never going to walk in with 100% of the support. Near as damn it, Klopp would be near as damn it. And I'm not saying Klopp is it. Before we go any further, I'm making the point that even a guy of that stature, there'll be some people who don't think it's a good idea. Yeah. There might be some Rangers fans that wouldn't mind Dyche. He's straightforward. He is what he is. He does what he says in the tin. He would get a team together that would be certainly capable of offering up a fight and a committed sort of style of play. Is that what anybody's really looking for these days? I think Everton fans will give you the answer to that. They didn't enjoy it. Rangers fans are slightly different breed in that what Rangers want first and foremost, I think, certainly has always been the case in my experience, is win. Win at all costs. Win. Just win. That was always Walter Smith's thing, and he would tell every manager that came into the job after he'd left, when you're the Rangers manager, there is one thing and one thing only that you need to bear in mind. It's win. Just find a way to win. That was his words. And he said it to them all the guys that come into the position after him. Walter Smith, probably a lot of Rangers fans will look back upon that period and think, it wasn't the greatest football, but it's a guy that just knew how to win football games, knew how to win trophies. And given the position that Rangers are in right now, with a lack of silverware, maybe they do need somebody straightforward. I certainly don't think it'll be Sean Dyche. if that's where the conversation's going. I think that they will look for something which captures the imagination a little bit more than Sean Dyche might. No offence to Sean Dyche.
How about Daniel Farker?
Whoa,
Because
now
this is
you're talking.
this is the
Now
current
you've got an
league manager.
algorithm on.
He should be celebrating getting promoted this week, and I'm sure he has been. But there's already reports today that he could be replaced this summer.
Astonishing. But you and I were talking just before we come on, Daniel, and this is really fascinating for the Rangers supporters, I think, because it might give them a little indication of what's in store, and of the level of decision making which might come along with the sort of 49ers influence. And if you really want to double down on it, you look and you say, right, we're Leeds and we need to appoint a guy that can get us promotion to the Premier League. How do we go about this? Well, there's this guy here. I know his hair looks a bit funny, but he's got some record of getting teams promoted into the Premier League. He just always does it. All right, okay, what's this guy? Oh, Daniel Farker, right, okay, bring him in. Daniel Farker does what is said, what is asked of him, what is said in the tin. He wins promotion to the Premier League. Now, the next problem you've got is, what's Daniel Farker's record like in the Premier League? Oh, it's an absolute disaster. What happened? Well, he came up with Norwich and he finished bottom the first time, got relegated with a really paltry return of points. Then what happened? Well, then he got you back up because that's what he did. Of course, so he got straight back up. Then what happened? Well, then they had to sack him after 15 games or 11 games because he'd taken 5 points from 33 in the Premier League. So, if you're really being brutal about it, you're looking at the Americans, the 49ers, and you're thinking to yourself, well, you've hired the guy that you needed to do the initial job. You've then looked at the data and the algorithms, and they've said, if you stick with this guy in the Premier League, you're taking a hell of a risk, and you're doing it out of what? Sentimentality? Because the guy earned it?
Yeah.
Now, there might be something, maybe that is the case, and maybe a lot of people out there would agree with that. But if you're actually analysing his credentials to take a team into the Premier League, he's not got any, because it's been a horror story for him.
You made the point off air, which I thought was a good point. If you were appointing a manager to be a Premier League manager at Leeds now, would you go for Daniel Farker?
Premier League, at any club in the Premier League.
Would you go for
Daniel
Farker?
Farker and say, well, the history tells you that he really struggles at this level. So no, you wouldn't. But if you were a team that was going for promotion from the Championship to the Premier League, he's your man. He's like Sam Allardyce in reverse.
Well, I guess he is. I mean, and I wouldn't feel too sorry for him. I'm sure he's got a very healthy bonus.
I mean, what a decision that is. And what interests me from a journalistic perspective, Daniel, is that story seemed to be leaked out. There seemed to be a coordination about that story coming out.
The timing was very suspicious.
Which makes me suspect that it's coming internally from the club, so that it doesn't come as a great surprise to people if or when it happens. And the story is, for those that haven't seen it, is that they are considering his position and or considering a list of alternatives for the manager's job in their first season back in the Premier League. They're not committing to either, but the sources around Leeds are saying they will consider 3 or 4 different candidates. And if they believe that none of them are better or better equipped than Farker, they'll keep Farker. But if they think that one of the 3, 4, 5 candidates they're looking at is better equipped to push Leeds up through that level and make them a Premier League team and establish them there, then they'll go elsewhere. I just think the fact that this rumour is already coming out there at such an early point, well, Leeds are they still haven't shaken off the hangover from the celebration. And Farker's waking up to read the paper and find out he could be out of a job. So that doesn't look great in terms of his long-term employment security at Ellen Road. But it does throw up that question, doesn't it? If this is all sort of umbrella club stuff, are they looking at Farker thinking, well, do you know what? I don't think you're a Premier League manager, but you might be a Scottish Premiership manager. Who knows? Who
Who
knows?
knows? Aye.
I mean, you can float the idea. Again, you've got Greta Steinson in there, who will be part of the whole decision-making process at this moment in time. How that looks going forward after summer, we're not sure, but he's been around and he's been present. Is he floating this idea? Does he? I mean, listen, he might think it's an awful idea. Who knows?
Aye.
But it is quite interesting to monitor. There's so much going on around this thing just now that you just need to keep an eye on, and I found that really interesting. But as I said to you, Daniel, see if you strip it right back and you think, if you're in charge of Leeds United and you're not worrying about anybody else, but you're thinking there's two phases here. One, get promotion, hire the guy that's brilliant at doing that. Two, once you're up there, make sure you stay up there. Sack the guy that's not very good at making sure of that.
Yeah.
So it makes sense, although it's really brutal.
Aye. We've got a couple of people writing in, Keith. John Orr is one of them, if I can find this here. He says, quite simply, who does Keith think will be the new manager?
Genuinely, not a clue. Genuinely not. But for all the reasons that we're discussing, you know, it's impossible to get inside this. And what I would say is, see the bookies list that you're seeing, ignore them. Ignore them. Listen, there might be a name that comes from nowhere and it starts to get a bit of traction because loose lips sink ships and all that. So someone somewhere will start talking if and when the conversation starts up.
Yeah.
Someone tells somebody, a family member who tells a guy at work, and next thing you know, it gets out there and it builds a bit of traction. But see, in terms of right now, this is nothing more than fans thinking Jose Mourinho would be good, Steven Gerrard would be good, bookies saying give us your cash, guys, and they set up the market. Right now, I don't think that we've seen the name of the guy that is the most likely candidate, because right now I'm not sure even the Americans are openly discussing it. So again, one to keep an eye on. And again, the guy that's just walking in the door, not even in the door yet, as the sporting director, he's going to have his own part in that conversation. And none of us know what his thoughts are. So it would be nothing more than complete and utter guesswork to throw in a name at this point.
Yeah. Before we finish, a little bit of transfer news that we have to touch on, Keith, because St Mirren striker Toyosi Olasanya has officially departed the club. He's
Some move
heading
for a minute.
Houston Dynamo, I think, on a 3-year contract. It's a big blow for St Mirren, that I would say. I mean, he's got 12 goals this season, but every time I saw him play, I thought he was an excellent player. I mean,
he's impressed me, and that's why he's earned his move.
I don't want to be patronising to St Mirren, but he looked like a player that could play, maybe not Celtic and Rangers, but maybe Hearts or Hibs. Maybe should have been looking at him.
No doubt, and again, you've got to hand it to Stephen Robinson's player recruitment, because this is what he does, and he ends up in this same situation most summers where if he's got good players, they'll end up getting sold. Or he'll have to make sort of wholesale changes to his squad. And it's happened over and over, and it's just repeating. It rinse and repeat. But he's really good at finding guys, isn't he? And bringing them in, and the next guy that's going to earn a couple of quid, or the next guy that's going to score some really important goals, lead the line, and give the team everything that they require. It's a tricky one to repeat it year on year on year, but that's 3 years in a row now that St Mirren have finished top six. My one worry about it is you do look at Motherwell, and this was something we talked about a week or so ago. You know, Motherwell were doing great because Motherwell just seemed to every season find a guy that was going to put the ball in the net frequently, prolifically. And when that dried up, when you run out of a striker and you have to go through a season when you don't have that talismanic guy leading your line, things can get difficult very quickly. So you're asking Stephen Robertson to keep on producing miracles, but to be fair to him, there's no sign of it slowing down. He's done a terrific job, and they're in a situation where they can cash in, do this deal before the if there's any transfer window deadlines. Not sure what the status is in the USA just now. I think there might be some deadline approaching. So St Mirren couldn't do this deal if they were fighting for their lives in the bottom six.
Yeah.
Because they'd be accused of potentially selling themselves down the river, but they've got the security of knowing whatever happens to the Premier League again or Premiership again next season. So good luck to him. I've enjoyed watching him. I think he's been a big contributor to a really impressive St Mirren side again. And I think you're right, Danny. I think you looked at the boy and you thought, you've got a chance. So let's hope it goes well for him in the States.
A friend of the show, Kyle Gunn, writes in saying Olasanya's contract had 5 games left to run, and we've just got 200k out of an MLS club for him. Brilliant business for a player who was signed from Middlesbrough on a free transfer in 2022. I think that sums it up rather nicely.
That's. Do you know what? There's Kyle once again, not for the first time, telling me something I didn't know. I was unaware that was the contractual situation there. And if St Mirren have managed to turn a coin like 200 grand out of that from that situation, that's pretty impressive stuff.
Aye,
so
brilliant.
Well played to all involved.
I think
well played, Kyle.
Aye, absolutely. Aye, thanks for getting
right, wee man.
We appreciate it. I think that brings to the end of Wednesday's Hotline Live with Record Sport. Thank you so much to all of the comments that come in again tonight. We had a plethora of them. We appreciate it. Thanks for watching. We'll be back to do it all again at 6 p.m. tomorrow. We hope you can join us then. Keith, it's always a pleasure.
Right, Dan.
Actually, before I go, our old pal Gianni has been in touch. He's saying
with the offer, the terms of the sponsorship. Yeah.
Well, do you know what he says? He says, make sure to tune into the Milan Derby tonight, Daniel, on your Fire Stick. Now, first of all, how dare he besmirch my character, saying that I would use a Fire Stick, right?
You've got a Fire Stick in your telly right now, which is why you've got the Hotline Live thing up.
And secondly, I was actually at the Milan Derby in February. So there you go, Gianni. I'm an OG, as they say in the rap world.
Gianni's a big Juve fan. He texted me the other night about something, and I said, "Look, what's even happening with Juve? Are they still in Serie A? You never hear about them. They don't seem to be competing at any serious level." So I'm sure Gianni will be good to watch an Italian match that's got something on it in terms of the possible Scudetto winners at Inter.
Absolutely. I think they'll win the Champions League as well. How about that? There you go.
Not sure. Not sure.
Aye.
I've told you PSG's my tip for that.
You did say that, aye. Well, on that note, I think that brings to the end, Keith. As I say, it's always a pleasure. Thanks very much for watching, and hope you can join us tomorrow. Cheers.
Cheers all.